Welcome back to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. I am excited to have a real asset, friend, consultant, friend to the agency owner, independent agency owner from East Greenwich, Rhode Island, owner of Agency Performance Partners, the one and only Kelly Donahue-Piro.
You should follow me around and do all my intros. That
Okay.
was very, very
Well, I
good.
stumbled there a few times, so
Oh,
we'll
that's
just
okay. That's okay. Practice makes it perfect for sure.
welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. We're excited.
Yeah, I think that most people probably are aware of you, know you pretty well. So let's just give a real uh high view of a little bit about your background, why you chose the insurance industry, and what led to APP.
Yeah. So like insurance chooses you, right? Unless you grew up in an insurance family, and I did not grow up in an insurance family. But yeah, so I got into financial services banking when I was in college and was a bank teller, and I needed money for pizza and beer. So they had programs like tee up stuff to other departments. And again, I'm old, right? So back when I was in banking, there was no such thing as a debit card. you know, like and it sounds crazy, but that was, like I'm 41, so it was 20 years ago. We didn't have debit cards, right? People
Yeah.
went into these things called banks, and I would just ask everybody in line, do you need auto insurance? Do you need a credit card? Like I didn't care
Yeah.
because whatever, right? And so bank thought I did pretty good at that, and then moved me into some training and sales and marketing fields, and then mortgages just went and so
Yeah.
everything in the banking world was like insurance. We can't lend
Yeah.
anything, so let's do insurance. And kind of got my real true start there. And then over time bounced around from a couple different banks and credit unions. And then before InsurTech was popular, a company said, hey, I think we could use your services, and started the client services team of like one of the first insurance CRM tools. That company got sold to Zywave. And when that was going on, I broke off about 10 years ago and started APP, because what we just found was, with the CRM tools, we could generate like a cross sell. Somebody would call in and say, hey, I got this email about saving money on my auto insurance. But a lot of the staff just didn't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that sounds a little crazy, but they would say, oh, well, no one's available. Can you call back? Or we'll call you back later. Or I'm going to send you a quote sheet. Could you fill this out? Then we'll quote you. And so many things were very unclient centric at that
Yeah.
point. And so we helped kind of revolutionize that. And so we like to say we go into agencies that are kind of messy and help clean them up and put them on track.
Yeah, I feel like with APP, you really feel a need for people like me that are maybe a growing agency
Yeah.
and have neglected the operations side of things. For that's exactly what I did for years before I started to really hone in, take a look at my business and figure it out.
Well, be kinder to yourself. You probably didn't neglect it,
well,
but
that's just accurate. I mean, am I the only one? No, absolutely not. But
yeah, you had to put food on the table. Like, I
yeah,
think people underestimate sometimes, like, hey, when you're starting a business and you're the center of the business, like you have to put food on the table and you have to do these things. And there's all these things you have to do. You can't do it all. So you focus on the next right thing. And that means there will be some collateral damage. And I
yeah,
think we all want it to be perfect, but it's impossibly perfect until you get to some of those steps. And then you have to pay a little tuition to fix them. And then they become stronger and stronger and stronger. But we like to say, like, a lot of agencies are not as prepared to go through their awkward teenage years, because it feels like you're doing something wrong all the time, but you're really doing it right. You're just growing into your next step.
wow, well put. I've never heard it put that way, but that's exactly what it's like. So when you started APP, so you found this problem or identified this problem, and we're gonna have a solution for it. What was it like? Because you had your own business.
Yeah.
What was it like to go into this agencies and say, hey, I think I can help?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I was doing it for the tech company because what they found was, like, we couldn't renew technology because people said there was no ROI. But when we like generated a website lead back in the day, right? Like a contact form on your website. Again, I'm going back in the time machine. Some people listen to this and be like, what is she talking about? But like there was a time where you could jam a lot of keywords on a web page, be ranked first in your town for auto insurance overnight. and your team was used to taking referrals. Now they're having people from like 50 miles away say, I need to quote my auto insurance. And
Yeah.
nobody knew what to do, right? This was like different times.
Yeah.
And so, so I'd already been going, I already had this network of people that, knew and liked and kind of trusted me. And what I found was I became really good at being what I call like the account manager whisperer. Like, and we just chat about this. Like, this is really an underdeveloped group, I think, in insurance.
Yeah.
We focus on producers and agency owners have things like IAOA and mastermind groups to go to. But the account managers are managing millions of dollars of your premium,
Yeah.
and we teach them transactions and we
Yeah.
don't teach them some of the other things. And so now all of a sudden the world's changed, especially in personal lines. There used to be personal lines producers. Now, some agencies have them, but I'd say the vast majority don't. And a lot of the teams service and sell just the call-in business. And we've never taught them a sales process. We taught them a quoting process.
Yeah.
So, but then we're asking them, well, why didn't we do this? Why is this? Where's this? And we haven't always given everybody the right tools. And so I just became really passionate about how do you grow an agency? And what you see is a lot of times the agency is running the owner, and the owner is working 80 hours a week, stressed. I call it taking 911 calls all the time. And they're so clogged up that they can't get to fix the back end solutions
Yeah.
because it's a hard transition and reconciliation. And then, like you said, sometimes the owners feel a little guilty, like, well, I should have been doing this. And I said, you couldn't have done it. Like,
Yeah.
don't beat yourself up. So let's just go do it now. And let's get them with processes and systems on track.
Yeah. So, you've been into this for 9 years?
On my own, yeah. I did
Yeah.
about 10 years for the other company before that.
Yeah. What have you found to be the biggest challenges, or some of the biggest challenges?
Yeah.
You tend to forget some along the way, some of the bumps, but
Yeah. Well, and now the market's a challenge. So I'm going to put that
yeah.
aside because that's like everybody knows the market's a challenge, but it's an
Yeah.
opportunity. And I really encourage people to stop thinking of it like, oh, the market, say opportunity. There's people who are going to sell. There's carriers who are going to cut contracts. Like if you're positioned right and you did the work, you're primed to take this opportunity.
Yeah.
But there's three things that it's funny. We go into agencies and I can predict communication. Just how do we communicate, staffing, and I think procedures. And
Yeah.
when I think procedures, I don't think like where to click. I think, okay, well, how do we have an endorsement experience?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if Brad calls in and says he wants to change a vehicle, am I like, year, make, model? I'm like, Brad, great. What kind of car did you get? That's so exciting. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, we're going to make sure you're all taken care of. This is a new vehicle. I want to make sure you have the best insurance for it. So let's get started. And they don't think about some of those things. Or do I tell them the premium? Do I tell Brad the premium at the end when he's bought a new vehicle and turned in his 15-year-old Camry for a brand new Range Rover? Or do I wait till it comes in the mail because, man, that's a big premium and I don't want to talk about it? Like those are the kinds of things I think, it's like, hey, it's built in the process. We have to talk about it.
Yeah. 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 And how many you've worked with so many agencies over the years, how many agencies, rough percentage of agencies that you would say that have a written process for all these different things?
So like some have a process and no one knows where it is. It doesn't like it's not functional. And so what I probably lean our approach is a little bit more like, okay, here's your checklist, right?
Yeah.
Like because then it's interactive. And this is what happens. The OGs, the original gangsters have been there forever, hate checklists. Like I just know it. I remember it.
Yeah.
And then I'll go back through and be like, but you missed this, this, and this. Like and it's they just don't like to change their process. And then the new green people who I'm super excited about, I think we have a lot of new talent coming in,
Yeah.
but they want that structure. Like they want to know they get on a phone call with someone that they're doing it right because they don't have all that the reps that the OGs have put in. And so when we give them like a checklist for an endorsement or a renewal call or a remarket, they're like, this is great. I just have to ask the next thing in line.
Yeah. 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 It's guideline. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so like they're like, and the script is right there. I like the fact that you even tell me how to say it. I'm like, okay, cool. And so I like the processes to be as interactive because otherwise you just sit on a shelf and no one uses them until we sort of beat people into submission or they get out of date. and they become unusable. And so I think processes have to have a cross section of interactivity too.
Yeah. I feel like there's probably more resources now, or at least they're more accessible or put
Mhm.
out there.
Mhm.
And maybe because when I took over as an owner, I didn't look for them.
Right.
And maybe now I'm paying attention that much more. So there maybe there's a lot of still a lot of that out there. I don't know. But it's not hard to find people that are discussing processes
Sure.
and training. So hopefully that um is helping the younger agency owners, develop a better pathway.
Yeah, and I think you got your system right. Like I joke, I say you don't need any more logins in insurance, right? So we and as agency owners, it's always like, okay, we have a problem. I'm going to solve it by buying a piece of technology.
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah,
so now you have this tech stack that is clunky sometimes and maybe not optimized, and there's overlap. Like I can do texting out of my management system and my phone system and this, and you have to make decisions, and that's
yeah,
the hard part, right?
yeah. Uh, which, by the way, routinely here, our staff that I mean, staff must our team must hate when we come back from a conference, right? Because we have this new fresh idea. I want to implement 7 different things and throw everybody into a tizzy. So I learned that way too, not to implement too many things at one time and make sure it makes sense. I kind of established something where I won't even look at something unless I have a process for it.
Yeah, or you
Otherwise,
can measure it, right?
yeah,
How do we know? How do we know if it's working? I like to call that the cowboy moment. You guys come home and it's like, "We're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this." And the staff's just like, "Give it 5 days. He's gonna forget about half
yeah,
this stuff and we'll be fine." Like,
yeah,
but you're jacked up and they're just like, "That's not my biggest problem, Brad."
yeah. Which is part of learning as an owner. We have to learn too, just like everybody else kind of learns on the job, for the
Mhm.
most part. Some are exceptional, I would say. Um, in this hard market, working with agents across the country, what would you say are some of the best practices from addressing these challenges?
Wait, we're in a hard market? When
Yeah,
when did this happen?
apparently I heard.
Yeah, so it's so interesting because, like, group benefits is laughing at the PNC, like, we've been doing this since Obamacare, guys, like,
Right.
like, Canada had a hard market, like, 25% commercial rate increases during COVID, like, so we've gotten to see different bits and pieces of I mean, Florida, you go to Louisiana, like, there's different bits that's the benefit I get by I've seen some
Yeah,
of this coming down the pike, and now it's hitting like, Kemper announced they're not doing, what they're doing. And so I think a couple things. I see so many agency staff, like their battery is so drained because
yeah,
they're having these difficult conversations and they're sweethearts, right? And so imagine you're, taking your 15th call of the day, letting someone know why their rate went up 25%.
yeah.
Like, are you having a lot of joy in your day?
It's a hard day.
It's a hard day and it's Groundhog Day and there's no end that this is going to happen in sight, right? And
Yeah,
so what we try to encourage people to do is first of all, I got to say it's not personal, like, and you're actually the person that's best equipped to help them. So they're not mad at you, they're mad at the situation. And most people are going to react. And you need to have confidence and take control of that call. And you can't apologize. I yell, I scream, I put swear jars in agencies. If you apologize for rate, you did nothing wrong. Why are you apologizing?
yeah,
I'm sorry
yeah,
your rate went up. We just admitted fault. It shouldn't have happened. But here's the great news. It's that or the carrier goes out of business.
yeah, yeah. So with that, with those trying days, and some of them are, and I don't think in our state we're not nearly as affected yet.
Mhm.
Maybe we will be, but we're really not. We have markets. We still have plenty of markets to work with.
Yeah.
There's certainly challenges, no
Mhm.
question about that.
Mhm.
But we don't have it as bad as some other states. And of course, the extremes are Florida and California.
Yep.
Um, and with some of these challenges, how can we combat some of this? My concern is maybe an employee burnout.
Yeah. I think that's a really good one. So I think that agency owners previously could be peacetime CEOs. What do I mean by that? Like you just keep the train on the tracks, right? Like We got enough people, we got enough staff, all is well. We do summer Fridays, we're good, right? And now today we're sort of at war, and a wartime CEO has to be very engaged in like, guys, these are the clients we're going to run off the book and we're happy about it. Like this is our remarketing backlog. We're going to only remarket these types of policies because I can't remarket a monoline $700 auto. We do not have the bandwidth.
Yeah, right.
Like you almost need to make protocols that are very direct. And because we did it before, people are sort of grieving that scenario, but we have to get really routed in the best for the client. I mean, the inspections are coming back pretty egregious, so we move a client, save them $300, and that inspection comes back and they need X, Y, and Z, or they're canceling because we had a policy get canceled because they had 5 bags of mulch in their driveway. Not move the mulch and take a picture.
Yeah,
And
right.
when did mulch become so dangerous?
Correct. Yeah, what's the risk?
Like, so I think you have to do that. You also have to take difficult phone calls for them. And I think agency owners also have to state the facts. So the team is going to focus on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who says they can't afford their insurance, and they're going to wear that like a winter coat in the summer all day. But when you look at your metrics, every agency is growing, right? So we have to keep looking. Our retention's X. We're growing. We're writing new business. So it feels different than the numbers are showing it. And we have to rely on the numbers because they don't have feelings where we feel bad every day. But Brad, I also say this, like I fly every week. Every plane's packed. Every Starbucks still has a line
Yeah,
around it. People just don't want to pay more for their
yeah,
insurance, but they
right,
do. And most of them renew.
right. I heard you say on another podcast, along those ways, or on this topic of, I think as the leader, it helps to let your team know you're there with them, and keeping the morale up, positivity up, and sometimes just say, "What's your hardest call today? I'm going to take that for
Yep.
you."
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a fantastic idea. Any other nuggets like that you can think of that are we can support our team?
Yeah. We like to start every day with what we call happy hour. So just start your day, whatever, 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever time you guys start. Everybody just share one success from the last day. And you'll find I increased so-and-so's auto liability, like because you have to start your day positive,
Yeah,
right?
I like it.
And so people will be like roll their eyes and be like, "Oh, this is dumb." And then after a few weeks, they're like, "Okay, I kind of like it." We also have a thing where it's like get everybody's favorite things. Like we have a list, and it's like, "What's their favorite candy, soda, whatever." If they're having a bad day, be like, "I got you peanut M&Ms.
Yeah.
You did a good job." I also think like now is a time to think about incentive plans. Like we believe in what's called a growth bonus. So distributing 10% of growth quarter over quarter. So if you grew, say, $50,000 in revenue in one quarter, you would take 10% of that, which is $5,000, and distribute it to the team. And if
Mhm.
they can see that growing, they get excited about that money. It's almost like hazard pay for them because we are growing, and some of those things can help out. And I also think another thing to do is meet with your team, do one-on-ones with them.
Yeah,
Like, how you doing? Because, they need some time away from their desks or give them quiet time blocks. Like, hey,
yeah,
every other day you're going to have 90 minutes off the phone for you to just get your organized, get yourself together. And that sometimes is like that's better than just, they're picking up 911 calls all day.
yeah. I've noticed is I've been trying to do the one-on-ones for a long time, and until I noticed that I would have to schedule it.
Mhm. Oh,
Otherwise it wouldn't
definitely.
happen.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I'm intentional about that at the beginning of the week of scheduling that in, and all it has to be is 15 minutes.
Yep. And sometimes they're longer, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes they're shorter but the first ones are super awkward. I don't know if you encountered that where it's like, "Hey, hey."
I I agree, because I think initially I felt that some of ours would look like, "Is this a review? What's going on?
Yeah.
Door open or closed?" And
It's
so
like, "I just wanna talk to you for a minute. You're a person, I pay you, I thought we could talk."
yeah, yeah. So, but I think the one-on-ones are so important, so
Yeah.
important.
And I think we forget like our biggest expense in an agency is payroll. And we often don't tend to that investment nearly the way we should. We just sort of leave people out to do their own thing and identify problems after they happen. Where I'm like, I'm all about like development. I think one of the challenge we're getting a lot of new green people in this industry, which I'm psyched about. Some really smart, talented, bright, like people who I'm psyched. But I think we still have a gap of developing leaders,
Yeah.
and developing that next level. And I think that's been a void for a long time. Like there's some people who are more like team leaders, like they handle escalated issues, but are they really like driving the team, driving performance, addressing when people aren't adding procedures? So that leadership role in an agency is, I think, going to become very important in the next couple of years.
For sure. And that is something, again, like, you have to be intentional about, not to keep coming back to that word, but
Yeah.
until I was, and um I'll just say it again, I owned my agency for, nearly 7 years before I really became intentional and started to work on myself and investing in myself as a leader, before, I really noticed a change in myself, and then also our group.
Yeah. And being a business owner is very lonely. I don't think we talk about that
Yeah.
nearly enough. Like, because you do in insurance, we have all these like powerhouses, right? And I've had the pleasure of being in their agencies and working with a lot of them. And they get up on stage and you're like, I just need what they have.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, all of them have a junk drawer. All of them have a problem employee.
Yeah.
All of them have something they're working on. They're just coming up here. It's like Instagram, right? You only put the best pictures. You don't put
Right.
the ones where like, you've got spinach in your teeth. And I just always encourage people. It's like being a business owner is very lonely because your staff you're friendly with, but they're not your friends. And one thing that I always drives me nuts, people say, "Oh, my staff's like a family," and I go, but that's wrong because there has to be a hierarchy. There has to be someone in
Yeah.
charge. There's just some protocols to it. And so when it's like that, you're going to struggle to hold people accountable because you're it's too intimate almost.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's a very fine line, um, of getting to know your people,
Mhm.
being open, but also there still has to be, there has to be that
There's a
hierarchy, like you said.
protocol like
Yeah.
that and you can have a good time, you can enjoy their company, but you still are the owner of the business and they still have a different arrangement. And just like that, they may leave and you may sell your agency at some point in time. Like
Yeah.
it's not the same. And going back to one thing you said about the hard market, and just being, I think, open and transparent. I also think that we have to really get crisp on job descriptions, what people should be spending their time on. And also, the owner themselves cannot go around and be like, "Oh, I can't believe XYZ carrier did this." Like, they cannot speak negatively about the market. Even if you're so mad at an underwriter, you're so mad at a rate, your neighbor's rate, you got chewed out in your driveway this morning too by your neighbor. I get it all, but you got to go in sunshine and rainbows and you got to call your other industry friends or a mentor or coach and deal with your own head trash about it offsite. But if they see you
Yeah.
fragile, it gives them permission to do the same thing. And we can't afford that right now.
Yeah. 100% it does. Um, I've referenced it, with this market, and I try to remain very positive, and I think
Yeah.
overall I'm a positive person. Um, and as we talk about these changes and company restrictions and that sort of thing. But on the other side, I'll also say I also see a huge opportunity
Yeah,
in this
definitely.
market for what we have. And even with these restrictions, because um, I know that people are shopping, and I know that we have a very strong renewal process. So we should be able to retain, and we're
Yep.
being very proactive. And so we should be able to retain a large piece of our book, even though our people are shopping too. Um, but there's a lot of people shopping. So I think that we can get a lot of that good business. We might have to work a little harder for it, but I think we can do it. I've heard you say before that, this is not all garbage, your words. Um, so so
It's not.
talk a little bit about why there is some positivity and some opportunity in this market.
Well, I'm psyched for our clients because like they have done the work over the past few years of organizing and their team doing renewal review calls, right? Like starting them now is hard. like hi, I just want to introduce myself. Let me tell you about your rate, right? And not saying, by the way, that's not a reason not to do them.
Yeah.
Okay. You're just doing
Have to.
them in, you're doing them in a little bit more of inclement weather. That's all. I also think, like I talked about these green people coming in, like they're going to get the master class of insurance and be really, really, really strong agents if they stay
Yeah.
in this industry. Like there'll be a time 5 years from now where like a new green agent comes in. It's like, I have to deliver $100 rate increase. What am I going to do? And they're going to be like, ah, that's funny. And, like you want to almost give them that training as fast as possible, like
Yeah.
to get them in. Um, but the opportunity I see is, this is my outlook. I think carriers are going to start canceling contracts on agents that are not profitable, that are not hitting commitments, that are, and so you're going to see a lot of these smaller potentials come through. And that's an opportunity to acquire, merge, or take those customers, right? Because the carriers are now,
Mm.
their whole thing is profitability. That's all they care about. They're in profitability mode. So they're going to cut anything not profitable. They're starting on the client end. I think by the end of the year, you're really going to start to
Mm.
see some people, putting agents on warning if they're not writing good business. And that's an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I think you're going to find the generation that's still hanging on is going to be like, I'm done. I want to sell. And the challenge you're going to have, though, is they got offers last year with private equity money that's not buying like they were. And so they think here, and you're going to have to offer
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. That's exact. We're already seeing those things.
Hmm.
And I think you're right. I think we might see those in higher volumes. I'm seeing, companies canceling appointments,
Yep.
and then we're also seeing, we'll see on an IAOA thread of somebody says, you know what, I've had it, I'm done. Who wants to buy? And I'm like, whoa, may not be the best way to go about it.
And
And
their phone blows up and their DMs blow up.
I'm
And
gonna
then
tune in here because I gotta see what happens.
yeah.
But and then that's also what I'm hearing is that from prospective buyers that are educated buyers that are saying, well, they're asking, 2021 numbers of a multiple of 9, and
And
it's
this carrier that they have stopped writing new business. Like it's a messy, messy book,
and
right?
they don't have an AMS.
No,
So
no. And the other thing I think that we're going to deal with is I think there'll be some captives that start really constricting, right? Like you've seen that in the California and Florida markets. But I think there'll be a captive that nationwide is just like, hey, listen, we're not writing new business. Like if you think of nationwide when they did what they did was captive, like you guys would have been like, heyday.
yeah.
So I think that you're going to see that. Now, I also, the one thing I'm seeing, Brad, and I'm curious if you're seeing this, is like the consumer is starting. We're at the very infancy stage of this, but they're starting to say, if I'm going to pay more, I want better service. I'm not just going to go to an agent where I just pay my bill and I get put on
Yeah.
autopilot. Like you're BORing more. You're
Mm.
you're having people say, I called my agent. I haven't gotten a phone call back in 3 days. Like I'm done. I'm ready to move. And the price is not as influential to some people who have had bad experience, right? So I think really having those service models is important because you can't take that business on and then treat them the same way.
Yeah.
And some agencies have, I call like a lot of quiet quitting where, hey, like I just didn't get to it today. Like there's not that drive and passion to take care of the customer in some pockets.
That's an excellent point because that is exactly how I still feel, but felt specifically after the pandemic when you saw the increased food costs at the restaurant. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't pay this much and have terrible service and
Right.
the food be mediocre.
Right.
That's not going well. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's an excellent point. That if people are going to be paying more, significantly more, it's kind of a reasonable expectation that they should be served well.
Yeah. And I think too, it's, like everyone worked on Google reviews and getting those on, like those will matter now. Like a
Yeah,
lot of the work that people put in maybe 3 to 5 years ago is going to start really coming to fruition.
we are as far. I talked about seeing the opportunity, and I've nearly doubled my ad spend, with Google Ads, and I've been getting as many leads and some very quality leads as I ever have.
Wow. Good
And
for
I'm
you.
trying to take the temperature of, okay, well, what can we handle? I'm
Mhm.
always trying to
That's
be
smart though.
I'm trying to be conscious of not overwhelming,
Yeah.
of my team. But and then, okay, well, how do I, this is a growth potential to me.
Yeah, and I think that that's smart to say, like, what can we handle as long as the quality is there, that's
Yeah.
something as long as you're dialed in on that, which takes time, right? And then I also think too, for me, I sometimes wonder, do I have to pay for it or do I have it? Do I have a list of unsold quotes or customers that left that I can work,
Yeah.
because I can temper that a little bit more than just I paid for the lead, we got to hop on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're hitting, and again, it takes it takes a while to put a process in place of what we're going to go after. Dead files. Um, we've been really hitting we've been hitting the cross sells for a
Yeah.
long time, but we've really been, a little more strategic, and to say, hey, let's take advantage of these discounts. Probably the biggest discount you can have is to have your car and home bundled
Yep.
together, and you just keep trying, and we're seeing those, so we're getting a lot of traction on it, and it's just something that makes sense. um let's pivot a little bit to your business, and I when I talked about what of as you being, um a leader in your business, what are some challenges that you've faced over the years? I think it's always different,
It's
when you preach it, and it's easier to say, harder to do,
yeah,
right?
like how hypocritical can I really be, right? I always say this, that the 2 hardest challenges I've ever faced owning a business, the first one every single one listening to this podcast will face is, um and I still hate it, but I also completely understand it, but it's when you outgrow some team members, right? So they're here and they added a value and they were very loyal and they wore a lot of hats and they did a lot of stuff okay and they were like kind of like duct tape, but then as you grow you're trying to get more specialized and dive deeper and have more responsibility and accountability, and sometimes those people just can't take that leap with you.
Yeah.
And I think as leaders we keep trying to make that work, but either because they were friends or they were there so long that it becomes this pattern that's really hard to break. And so that's why I'm a big advocate of like job descriptions. And I tell on my team, like, I'm happy to be friendly with you, but at the end of the day, my commitment is to running a profitable business. And that's
Yeah.
supreme above everything else.
Yeah.
And if I do that, then you guys get to make more money. You go on better vacations. So don't ask me to choose between friendship and doing that, because the choice is going to be I'm chairman of the board. My job is to protect everybody, not one person.
Yeah.
And, you have to set that up early on so people understand that.
Yeah.
And I didn't always do that, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Well,
Didn't
sharing your vision,
share
right?
your vision, and then also they have to see you as the boss. Like, I think
Yeah.
so many agencies struggle with that. Like, I had that conversation yesterday and we were talking and it's like, well, what would you do if they didn't do renewal review calls? I'm like, they'd have a talking to, they'd show the metrics, they'd be written up, and then they'd be on a performance improvement plan. Even if you're short staff, I said, even if you're short staff, because it's my choice to decrease the volume of renewal calls, it's not their choice to not make them.
Yeah.
So I can take their feedback and say, we're going to do half because we're short staffed. They can't just say we're going to do none.
Yeah. And as owners that we handle, we have to learn how to do those things. I put somebody on a performance improvement plan, um 4 years ago now,
Mhm.
and I didn't know what I had to. I called workforce attorney, friend of mine, to just get some guidance, and here I am drawing up this performance improvement plan. I'm sure I probably could have outsourced it, but that's how we learn, is to go through
Yeah.
all these different facets of owning a business. But I think that's how we learn, unless we find somebody that can help us.
Well, and I think as leaders, like, we always think, what could I do differently? Did I train them well? Was I clear on this? Like, you always look at yourself first about what you could do differently. And someone
Yeah.
once just said, the only job for an employee is to make your life easier. You pay people to make your life easier.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, when you start adding up payroll and payroll taxes and benefits and everything else, you look at that dollar amount and say, are they making my life easier? And if they're not, that has to be questioned, because otherwise, you're trying not to see them in the hallway and like hope they don't come and talk to me today. And you're paying somebody,
Yeah.
right? That's it. And it's hard because these people are necessarily good people and they've been loyal. It's not easy, but you have to say this is where the business is today. And if you truly want to get to where you want to be, you have to be upfront and honest. I don't think anybody should ever, it shouldn't be a surprise if someone gets terminated. Like, it should be a performance improvement
Mm.
plan.
Yeah.
No one should be shocked. It should be out and open and transparent. And I think probably the biggest learning experience, Brad, you probably had to go to many do, is how do we have this difficult conversation? You didn't sleep or eat for 3 days and getting ready for it.
Yeah, that was and is the most difficult piece for me, is dealing with people, even the people that I have let go, whether it's producer or inside employee, whether they deserved it or not. That was hard for me.
Oh
I
yeah.
know the right answer, and I would do it. But that was the difficult piece.
Well,
And
and it's just like dealing with a rate increase. I don't think anybody looks forward to it. You're not like,
yeah.
woo, best thing I did all day, right? Like, and hopefully they terminate themselves, right? They move on. Like, that's the ultimate goal. So it's best for
Yeah.
both parties. But it is hard, and it's meant to be hard because it is a big thing, right? Like, I don't think anybody's like, woo, getting divorced,
Yeah.
excited, right? Like, it's a hard thing, and
Um,
we have feelings, and we're people too.
yeah. How did you scale? Uh, how did you scale your business?
Well, this was the second biggest, hardest thing, right? So,
Yeah.
like, we were scaling and then COVID hits and we fly to our clients, right? So that was like a 2 years of a like really weird, who's open, who's not open, who got
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know. I think I blacked it out. I don't even really want to go back to it. So then it was like, okay, we had to kind of redesign a lot of things, which was a huge opportunity, which we took it as. And now we're back in. So we grew 18%. We grew 23% last year, and then we're on track again to grow another 23%. So yeah, it's a blessing, but I tell people all the time, like, remember the Mighty Ducks, right? So I there's we have 10 people, and I think only 3 of them have been with me more than a year. Okay. So so
Wow.
imagine this. Now, some of them were clients that, like, they sold to private equity, so they knew us, like, they knew
Yeah.
our programs, like, there was some accountability. So I tell people this, I'm like, this is the year that we have to get our flying V. Like, we have to like, we have to be the Mighty Ducks. We're going to step on each other. It's going to be awkward and it's going to be weird, and we're going to have to rebuild. And I was always onto processes, but now you're adding all these different layers of, okay, now this is so and so's job, and automation handles this. So you have to rebuild everything in a lot of ways. And it's rewarding, but I would love to pop a pill and wake up in a year and a half when it's all the
Yeah.
dust is settled, and people are more confident and comfortable in their roles. And it's all in my head because we were small during COVID. It just didn't seem like the right time to keep adding more staff on.
Yeah.
And so now it's like I got to get my head out into everybody and still maintain a book because, everything's changing. So it's fun. It's teaching me a lot, but it's hard. And I think the hard part about scaling is you can't serve everybody, right? In an agency, you have to say, like, we're not taking this. We're saying no to some things.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, how are you? So as you've grown quickly and added on team members, how are you spending your time? Are you still, into the operations, into some consulting, or are you just, kind of overseeing everything?
Yeah, so I mean, I've contracts. These contract things, man, they just, he can't make the light switch. So what we say is, I'm not personally taking on any new clients, but I'm supporting our 3 consultants on the road. So
Yeah.
it's not uncommon for me to hop on a plane and get out there with them and, work with an agency. We're also trying to go through the place of, hey, we have a lot of online content, like you said, our blogs. We have an agency school, which is scalable, and we're focused on that. But I also say, like, I've been on the road for 20 years now, and as much as I enjoy it, it's just time for me to spend a little bit more time with my family and be home and be present
Yeah.
a little bit more, and let these guys go build their books of business. And they do things better than me. We have an Epic expert on our team. We have a Hawksoft expert. Like,
Mhm.
I know enough to confuse the snot out of people on that stuff, right? Like, like, I would focus more on personal lines. Like, I know commercial, but Bobby on our team knows commercial far better than me. And so it's exciting to see their skills kind of come through.
Yeah, right.
But I'm still speaking. I'm still going out and doing a lot of stuff. Like, people still see me everywhere. I'm still on my client contracts. And, it's hard. You build really good friendships with a lot of these people. So,
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about, you touched on some of those things. Um, Tell me about all the offerings of agency,
oh,
because there's a lot, right?
yeah. So, you can work with us a couple ways, right? We have an agency school, which is everything we would use to train your team, just recorded. So I said, I always had a soft spot for some of the agencies that maybe we were at a price point that was just not affordable. So I said, hey, here we go. Like, anybody could take this. If you have the time and the commitment, you could take it, and you can even add in some consulting hours, and we'll help hold you accountable and go from it. But it's no different. And the funny thing, Brad, is we have a lot of agencies that are in that growth mode, like they're scratch startup using it. And we have a lot of big agencies that have a whole training department that are like, this is great.
Yeah,
like, okay, cool. But where we really specialize is like the people problems, right? So you're not quite big enough for maybe a chief operating officer, but you're having those people problems. And if I can come in and win the team's hearts and get them all rowing in the same direction. And a big thing that we focus on with all of our consulting contracts is, and this is probably could go on another whole podcast, but I think one of the biggest challenges the independent agency has is the quality of data that you can get,
mm, yeah,
and out of your management system. So I go both sides. One, it's your responsibility to know your system. It's your responsibility to understand it and to use it properly. Okay. And I would say a lot of people just, it's a mess, right?
yeah,
And then the second half of it is these technology companies need to get their act together and make it easier and put some, ramifications on it. So a box pops up. Is this a rewrite? Okay, great. When the download hits, let's not put it as new business then. Like, they need to get their act
yeah,
together to put more parameters on and more alerts on. Like, there should be a way to alert that Sally's 35 activities overdue, and that should come to an agency owner, not have to
yeah,
be, you don't have to go find things. And so I still feel like our insurance technology is like we're rocking the 80s, and like it's ridiculous in my
yeah.
mind.
It's it's made some good strides, that's for sure. But
It's
yeah,
better than it was, but
yeah,
when you like, as a consultant, I can go buy all these other technologies that are not tied to download and Ivans and my accounting, and I'm like, I could do all this. You cannot.
yeah. Well, yeah, that is a whole nother podcast episode, because we could talk about that all day. Um, and how so many of us are just trying to duct tape things
But
together.
you can't make it an excuse either. Like,
Yeah,
you
right.
can't run your business off of feelings. So this is where we come into play, and we'll like help them get their reports set up, and we build dashboards and say we have to operate out of facts. Okay. Like, we have to get people using the system correctly. We have to know how many activities they're doing. And if, like, we had one agency where literally, like, for in a month of activities, the top out of the top 15, 8 of them were payment related. And I just said, Cindy, we got to go ahead here and get some payment things going. Like, it's killing your team's time. And so they've gotten over 160 people onto EFT or pay in full because we gave them the right scripts. We gave them an incentive. And now they're like, the first Friday of the month, it's nice here. I'm like,
um,
good.
I,
But
I,
when you know it, you can figure it out. Or do I get a VA to do certificates? Like, whatever it is, when
yeah.
you're not just going to a conference being like, we need a VA. What will they do? I don't know yet.
On that, one of the best things we've ever did was stop accepting payments in our
Yeah.
office, and yeah, yeah. So you can do it. You will survive. You'll still retain
We'll
customers.
survive. I will
They'll
put a
figure
little
it out.
caveat though, Brad, because I get a little hate mail on this. Like, there are some states that mandate that you have to take all forms of legal tender. So
Oh,
you have to check, right? Like, because there are some people
no.
like Pennsylvania, I think Vermont is one of them. There's some states out there that say you have to accept it. You can't reject it. But then I also struggle. I'm like, well, then they should accept Bitcoin. They should accept all like where's the end of it?
Yeah.
But you can strongly encourage, and you can use your powers to educate and encourage and get a lot of them on there.
Um, Last topic here, we'll get on,
Yeah.
and we talked about it a little bit off air. I think your content is, I think it's fantastic. It is. And for us as owners, it's so relatable. So check it out. It's all over the place. Your YouTube channel is great. And what I like is it's not just you,
No,
it's your team that's in
thank
there. A
you.
lot of it's conversations, but you really hit the topics that we need to hear. So talk a little bit about your content strategy because
Yeah.
I feel like something comes out daily, right?
It kinda does. We do a big blog every week, and it's over 2,500 words because my degree is in marketing, so I kinda have, like, my passion projects is, like, figuring out like, you like the Google AdWords and buying, like, I'm like, how can I game SEO right now and get here
Yeah,
and get
right.
there, and who's searching what? I wish I had a little more time to spend on it, but,
Yeah,
my thought process is, like, people and it was funny, Brad, because a while ago, we have a chatbot on our site, and, like, I don't know, like, at 10:30 at night, the chatbot would light up, like and it was always and this is my theory, because it was AI, right? So and I would see it kind of in the background, and if it got weird, I'd kinda, like, just step and be like, "Hey, how can I help?"
yeah,
But it was always an agency owner that was pissed about something that I think had, like, 2 old fashions and decided, like, they're gonna go on their wife was like, "I'm sick of hearing about it." They're, like, on their iPad, like, on the patio having a cigarette, be like, "How do I get my team to blah, blah, blah?" The chat bot would come up and they're thinking XYZ, and I was just like, well, everybody's out there searching for the solutions because one, I think I always done great things in some of these other networks where it's like, you don't have to just call your competitor to have these conversations. And, like you can get other feedback. And two, I think that like, why recreate the wheel? Most agency owners are great salespeople. They're not good, they're not great process people. And so if we can give you free tips and tools, and
yeah,
the biggest thing our blogs and our videos did is actually early on an objection we get was like, well, how do I know my team's going to buy in? Well, people start sharing these videos and like their team meetings, like, hey, let's watch this quick video from APP on like how to get people on EFT. And people are like, I love it. And so we stopped getting that objection because people could insert us in free, to
yeah,
do that. But I always like to say it's like you don't have to read everyone won't apply to you. But then
yeah,
like we do get people who come back and it's like one of our top ones is how to stop a cancellation, and the other top one is how to role play in an insurance agency. And I have a lot of questions on the role play one. If it's like if I'm on some kind of like dirty website somewhere, like because I'm like, there's an obscene amount of traffic to that page, and it's literally like 8 years old. It's not even good. I'm just wondering if like
yeah,
it got picked up somewhere
yep.
along the
That's
way.
funny. Yeah.
So I won't go down that path because I don't think I want to find out what comes back out of it. But
You could probably find that out. That's great.
there's a lot of time on site, so
Kelly, I know you have a heart out. I
yeah.
greatly, greatly appreciate the
Yeah,
time.
thanks for having me. It was fun.
Um, yeah, valuable conversation. I think a lot of people are gonna get a lot out of this. I know I did. Um, so thank you very much for joining us. Everyone else, thank you for listening to another episode of the Agency Owners Podcast. We'll see you next week.